The year is 1976. A resignation letter lands on the desk of the principal of a college in Mumbai. The man who wrote it was one of the most respected professors of that time. His job was secure, his salary was good, and he was immensely popular among his students. But yet he resigns. No illness, no conflict, or no scandal. Just one decision, a decision he never told anyone exactly whom he was making it for. Then 30 years later, this very man who would receive India's highest literary honor, the Jnanpith award, and then he would put down his pen forever, without saying a single word. Friends, who was this man? And for whom did he make the greatest sacrifice of his life? Hello, I am Hema Jadhav and I welcome you all to today's episode. Friends, everyone who reads Marathi poetry has heard this name, Vinda Karandikar. But how many people know that this name actually came from a tiny village in the Konkan? How many know that this man was imprisoned for participating in India's freedom struggle? And the biggest surprise of all, why did he voluntarily stop writing after receiving the highest honor of his life? So today we are not just going to read his poems. We are going to witness the journey of the man himself, from the soil of Konkan to the highest seat of Indian literature. Govind Vinayak Karandikar, that was his real name. But the world knows him by just two syllables, Vinda. This man was at the same time a poet, philosopher, a translator, a critic, and children's writer. He was the man who brought Aristotle's Poetics into Marathi, the man who introduced Shakespeare's King Lear to Marathi readers, and the same man who wrote nursery rhymes for our little children. But the question is, how could so many identities exist within a single person? And more importantly, even after achieving such extraordinary success, why did this man become so calm and detached during the final years of his life? To find the answer to these questions, we must travel back to the Konkan in the year 1918. 23 August 1918. A small village called Dhalavli in Devgarh Taluka of Sindhudurg district in Maharashtra. Close to the roar of the sea, surrounded by coconut and areca nut trees, it was a simple village like thousands of others in the Konkan region. It was here that Govind Vinayak Karandikar was born. His father, Vinayak Karandikar, lived in the village of Pomurle in Konkan. Life in Konkan during those days was not easy. Farming yielded very little, the rains were unpredictable, and most families struggled to make ends meet. But it was in this very harsh land, amidst this very nature, that a sensitive mind was taking a shape. The lush green hills of Konkan, the endless roar of the sea, and the pouring monsoon skies, all of this would later find a different expression in his poetry. So after completing his primary education, Vinda moved to Kolhapur for further studies. It was there that he completed his formal education. A boy from Konkan who possessed neither wealth or nor influential connection would one day become one of the most enduring names in Marathi literature. But before that, a much longer journey still awaited him. His education in Kolhapur proved to be a turning point in Vinda's life. It was here that the reader, the thinker, and the future poet within him gradually began to emerge. Scholars note that his early poetry was influenced by Madhav Julian. However, Vinda did not remain confined to a single influence. He studied English literature in the great depth, and this very scholarship eventually led him to become a professor of English. But this was not merely an era of books and classrooms. It was the era of India's freedom movement. And Vinda did not remain detached from it. He actively participated in the Hyderabad liberation movement. For his involvement in this struggle, he was imprisoned. Friends, on one side was poetry, on another philosophy, and on the third, the struggle for his country. The personality of the young Vinda was being woven together by these three threads. The experience of prison can break anyone, but in Vinda's case, it seems that this experiences taught him to think even more deeply. His perspective towards human beings, society, freedom, and ethics continued to grow more mature. And after independence, Vinda settled in Mumbai and began working as a professor of English at college. But during the same period, an extraordinary development was taking place in Marathi literature. Vinda Karandikar, Mangesh Padgaonkar, and Vasant Bapat came together and began conducting public poetry recitation programs. In today's language, one could say that they turned poetry into a live performance. Until then, poetry had largely remained confined to the pages of books. But the three of them brought Marathi poetry onto the stage and took it closer to the ordinary people. Their programs became immensely popular throughout the Maharashtra, and that was the moment when Vinda ceased to be merely a professor poet and became a public face for Marathi poetry. But the real transformation was yet to come. In 1949, Vinda's first major collection of poetry, Swedaganga, was published. The very title carried a philosophy, the Gangas of Sweat, a metaphor for creating flowing out of hard work. Over the next few decades, Vinda presented Marathi readers with important collections such as Mrudagandha, Dhrupad, and Jatak, and later selected collections of his poems, Sanhita and Adimaya, were also published. But Vinda's uniqueness was not limited to poetry alone. He translated his own poems into English, and the collection was published in 1975 under the title Vinda Poems. He also rendered ancient Marathi classics such as Jnaneshwari and Amrutanubhav into modern language, an effort to carry age-old wisdom to a new generation. And during the same period, he translated Aristotle's Poetics and Shakespeare's King Lear into Marathi, building a bridge between Western thoughts and the Marathi language. Now the question is, what made Vinda's poetry so distinctive? His language appeared simple, yet its meaning was profound. Emotion was certainly important, but even more important was the disciplined presentation of ideas. Scholars believe that he established the view in Marathi literature that poetry is not merely an expression of emotion, but also a discipline of thoughts. He wrote children's literature with equal affection, composing nursery rhymes and plays for younger readers. On one side was the depth of philosophy, and on the other side, the simplicity of child's mind. Vinda possessed a pen that could touch both these extremes. A poet who could translate Aristotle and also write songs for little children. Such versatility is rare in Marathi literature. Even at the peak of his success, Vinda's personal life remained remarkably simple. His wife, Suma Karandikar, was herself a writer. In her book Ras, she mentions many aspects of Vinda's life. Their daughter, Jayashree Vishwaskale, also remained actively involved in social work. But one particular example of Vinda's simplicity deserves special mention. In 1976, changes in the educational structure were about to put the jobs of two junior professors working under him at risk. To save their jobs, Vinda voluntarily retired from his own position. This incident is mentioned by his wife in her book Ras. Just think about it. A man who had success, prestige, and a secure job chose to give up his own career simply to protect someone else's employment. And he never publicized this act as a gesture of greatness. And later in 1981, he took the complete voluntary retirement so that he could devote more time to writing. And there is another remarkable fact. Although he was a freedom fighter, he never accepted the government pension offered to freedom fighters. His commitment to the principles remained unwavering throughout his life. These principles were not merely words. He lived by them every single day. Friends, Vinda's life was not a straightforward success story. Beginning in the poverty of Konkan, enduring imprisonment, and then spending his entire life practicing both financial and intellectual integrity, it was far from an easy journey. A professor who had earned respect and stability in society willingly gave up that stability. Many may never have understood that decision, but Vinda never compromised with his principles. The greatest and perhaps the least discussed decision of his life was yet to come, and it came at very peak of his literary career. The year was 2003. Vinda's poetry collection Ashtadarshani was published. This was not an easy book. It presented in poetic form the essence of the philosophies of Descartes, Spinoza, Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Bergson, and the ancient India Charvak philosophy. 8 philosophies brought together within a simple collection of poetry. It was Vinda who dared to weave philosophy into poetry. For Ashtadarshane, he received India's highest literary honor, the 39th Jnanpith Award. After V.S. Khandekar and Kusumagraj, he became only the third Marathi writer to receive these prestigious awards. And apart from this, he also received the Sahitya Akademi Award, Kabir Samman, Janasthan Award, and the Maharashtra Sahitya Parishad Award, along with several other honors. But the real story begins from here. Vinda did not keep the prize money of Jnanpith Award for himself. Instead, he donated it to the Sane Guruji National Memorial. He also donated the prize money received from several other awards to various social organizations. And the most astonishing thing of all, after Ashtadarshane, Vinda retired from writing. After receiving the highest literary honor of his life, he voluntarily laid down his pen. A poet, a poet who could have written so much more choose of his own free will to stop. It was as though he wanted to say, what I had to say has already been said. On 14 March 2010, Vinda Karandikar passed away, but his influence has never disappeared from Marathi literature. In his honor, the government of Maharashtra instituted the Vinda Karandikar Jeevan Gaurav Award, which is still presented to the senior literary figures today. His journey began with the Swedaganga and reached Ashtadarshane, a journey from a village boy in Konkan to the recipient of India's highest literary honor. So, friend, why should today's generation read Vinda? Because his poetry does not merely express emotion, it compels people to think. Because his life teaches us that true wealth does not lie in money, but in commitment to one's principle. A poet who transformed philosophy into poetry and then lived his own life with the same discipline and same simplicity. A man who could translate Aristotle and also write songs for our little children. A man who, even after receiving the highest literary honor, donated its prize money to the society instead of keeping it for himself. A man who, upon reaching the pinnacle of success, chose silence of his own accord. How can I understand myself? The poet who wrote these words was, in truth, someone who understands himself better than anyone else. Friends, Vinda Karandikar is no longer with us, but the voice he gave to the Marathi language continues to live on with the same strength even today. It is our responsibility to keep telling the stories of such individuals and to ensure that they are never forgotten. If Vinda's journey has touched your heart, then please like this video, share it with your friends, and do write your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to watch more stories of such forgotten and yet truly great personalities. See you in the next episode. Until then, keep reading, because if you read, you will succeed.